This is an SBC Media Partners production.
Swung on, hit high and deep, right field.
Could it be? It is out of here. Phillies fans, these are your glove stories with Murph.
Let's check in with Greg Murphy. Murphy, you got a special guest, huh?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Glove Stories with Murph. We are excited about today's program. Thanks to the good folks at Bet Park Sportsbook and Casino app, Shy Vintage Sports, and Phillies Nation for their support of the program. And we welcome in a guy who spent parts of 12 seasons in the big leagues, just one in Philadelphia. But while he was here, he really made a connection with the Philadelphia fans. And we welcome in Jeff Francoeur to the program. Frenchie, good to see you.
Good to see you, Murph. And I feel like since you have a sponsor that's a casino, it's meant to be for me to be on today.
You've really helped them out, which now they can help us out. We really appreciate that. So you know what? The one season in Philadelphia and your connection, we're going to get to that in a little bit. But I want to go back to the beginning for Jeff Francoeur, growing up in Georgia and a terrific athlete while you were growing up in high school, a two-sport star. You actually got a scholarship to go play football at Clemson. And how close were you to doing that? I know you're still a huge Clemson fan to this day, but was football ever really an option for you?
You know, what's funny is, now everything you can go see what people signed for in the draft and all that. So I always tell people I'm very truthful. I did, I loved football growing up, man. I played it since I was 6 years old. Yeah. Loved the idea of it. But then the Braves gave me 2.2 million reasons not to go to Clemson. So you know what, man? In all seriousness, baseball had always been my first love. And, my dad kind of reminded me, because you know how it is, man. Down in the South playing football, you get recruited and all of a sudden you're getting calls from Lou Holtz and Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno. And it was like, oh, man, this is real. And you can get carried away in that. But after a while, my dad kind of said, what's your goal for this whole thing? And my goal always was to be a big league baseball player. And he's like, you're going in the first round with the Braves. This is your opportunity to do it. And so as close as I like to say I was, I don't think I was ever that close.
Interesting. Do you think, had you gone and played football at Clemson, were you on track perhaps to be an NFL player?
That's the thing. I think I could have been a great college football player. I don't know. It's tough to tell. I always say the only thing I wish I could have done is one time I wanted to run down the hill at Clemson at an 8:00 ABC game or something versus Florida State. That's the only regret I ever have.
Well, I'm a Gamecock fan, so I don't even understand what you're talking about, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. Well, for baseball fans, certainly your decision was a good one. For fans in Atlanta, where you spent 6 seasons, it was a good one. Take me through, you're the hometown kid and you get drafted by the Atlanta Braves. It's a dream come true, but there's a lot I would imagine that kind of goes with that people maybe don't think about. What was that moment like for you when you knew you were headed to the Atlanta Braves organization?
It was great, and it made it even better, Murph, that Brian McCann, my best friend, was the 2nd round pick by the Braves. So here we are playing Little League since we were 10 together. And now all of a sudden it's like, man, we're about to do this journey together. So we actually ended up having like a joint party that night. All his friends from his high school came over to my house, and all my friends, his parents, like it was just a real surreal moment. And now, back then we had to listen on the radio, when they announced your name. It's not like today where they got this huge setup on MLB Network. Like, you're looking here on the computer and you see Jeff Francoeur and you're like, all right, Right. so as cool, it was really cool. I think as I got playing, it was great until I like to tell people it's the best thing playing in your hometown until you struggle. And then it's like, God almighty, you got the barber giving you tips on how to hit, And me, Murph, if there's one thing I could change about me when I was younger, I wouldn't be such a people pleaser, because I had a hard time saying no to a lot of the stuff, whether it was, charity stuff, which is obviously awesome work. But at some point, there's got to be a line drawn. And for me, I didn't really kind of have a good grasp of that until I got older.
Yeah, I would imagine, and you do hear guys that play in their hometown talk about that kind of thing all the time.
Yeah,
there's a lot that goes into just being a professional athlete, a professional ball player. You add in the pressures of home, and it makes it that much more difficult. Your mom and dad, both school teachers. Do I have that?
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, and brother and sister in the family as well. Talk about growing up in that family dynamic. I would imagine certainly helped shape the person you are today, right?
For sure. I tell people all the time and they can't believe it. My junior year was held out of half of a football game by my dad, not the coach, because I lied about a test grade and forged a signature. And my dad held me out for half the game in a big game. And I remember our coach going to my dad, look, we'll make him run extra. And my dad, I remember him saying, that does not matter to him. He will do any of that. The only way he will learn is by sitting his you-know-what on the sidelines and watching it half. And so it was always that way for me. My dad was a disciplinarian, and now that I have 4 kids of my own, I'm so glad that he did what he did, and I see why he did it. And, my mom was a school teacher for 32 years in the area, was a math teacher. She actually taught Matt Olson, who is now the first baseman with the Braves. We went to the same high school. And then my brother and sister, of course, were both ahead of me in school. And then I had the distinction. My sister was almost like valedictorian. She was so smart. And all the teachers would have me and they'd be like, man, you're not nothing like your sister. And I'm like, thank you so much. Yes. But, I always knew my priorities from an early age with my mom and dad. And so that is something I was always appreciative. I knew if I didn't have my grades right, if I didn't treat people with respect and behave, I wasn't going to get to do what I loved, and that was to play baseball and football.
Yeah. And you know what? It seems like such a simple thing, but when you grow up in that kind of atmosphere, it shapes the person you are. But I think it also helps make you successful even out there on the baseball field, because that kind of foundation is so important, and not everybody has that. So
no, you're right. It's this discipline is one of the biggest things. And you go look at some of the great players in the game today. They're so disciplined in what they do. And it shows out there. After 162 games, it will make a difference.
No doubt about it. All right. So then you get drafted. We talked a little bit about that. You're with your buddy, Brian McCann, and you head to the minor league system where for the most part, it seemed to come pretty easy to you, right? I mean, you kind of made a fast descent, right?
Yeah, I did. I didn't really have many struggles. The one big thing that happened in my career was in July 7th of 2004, I got hit in the face with a 96-mile-per-hour fastball in Frederick, Maryland. We were playing the Frederick Keys, and knocked me out stone cold. I ended up having 7 hours of surgery, and I shattered my whole nasal passage, my eye orbital bone. So for about 2 weeks after the surgery, man, it was hit or miss. I mean, the doctors weren't 100% sure, if I was going to get my full eyesight back. And so, of course, that was real scary for me. But if anything, that taught me, more than anything, that, by the grace of God, I was able to play this game. And every day I got to run out there, it was special. And so I think that also helped, because I realized that I really never took an at-bat for granted after that. I kind of knew what I had. But it's always cool. I tell people when I tell my story, I got hit in July 7th of 2004 in the face. And then July 7th of 2005 was my debut against the Cubs at Turner Field 1 year later. So just thinking how much can change in a year is crazy.
And that is crazy. I recognize that date because, I have my notes here that was your major league debut. But let me back up real quick. What was that? We've seen it happen to players before, but I've always wondered, what was it like getting back into the box that first time? I almost can't even fathom the courage that it takes to get back in there and do it again.
What's funny is, so my first at bat back, I was going to the Arizona Fall League, Murph. So they wanted me to take the rest of the year off. But I said, the last thing I wanted was my first at bat in the Fall League. I knew that's important. I was like, I got to get back. So with 2.5 weeks left, I convinced the Braves to let me come back, showed them I was healthy. And my first at bat in the minors when I came back was against Fernando Nieve, remember, who pitched for a while in the big league. And I you face these guys in the minor, you get to know them, and he knew I was coming back. And so I remember seeing him about 2 hours before the game that day. And I remember I purposely went up to him and I said, look, I know, because he had good control. He had pinpoint control. I said, I need you to buzz the tower on me one time. I said, do not tell me when. I said, but I need you to come in, and back me off the plate a little bit. At some point, I said, I got to get this thing. And so the first pitch was right down the middle at 95, and I was out of the batter's box before the ball. I was scared to death. But you know what happened? I actually ended up grounding out that at bat. My second at bat, sure enough, first pitch, man, he came up and in, and it was like, okay, I'm okay. And, it still took about a week or two. I didn't hit worth a crap. I might have got 2 hits, but it set me up for the Arizona Fall League because I went out there and had a great fall. And like anything, man, eventually you got to get over it. You got to realize that it's a part of the game. It's a freak accident. You barely ever see it happen, especially to that extent. And, I never got hit in the head again the rest of my career.
Yeah, I get all of that. But I thought you were going to tell me that you went up to him and said, "Hey, man, just outside all day."
No,
because
that's where the football mentality, I think, came in for me of like, man, I got to get back in there,
Well, it obviously was the right call and the right decision. That's good stuff. All right. So, a year later, you're called up by the Atlanta Braves, July 7th, 2005, midway through the season. And you get thrown into the fire. You got called up, I guess, on the 6th, right? And then your major league debut was on the 7th, the second game of a doubleheader. And tell me about that, because I would imagine you wore out the pass list because it was in against the Cubs. So you probably had a bunch of people there, but you made an impact pretty quickly.
Well, it's actually funny because our manager in Double-A was Brian Snitker, who obviously is the manager now for the Braves, won the World Series last year. And we got rained out in Montgomery, Alabama. So I was actually with 5 teammates. We were doing sake bombs at the local Japanese restaurant next door. And he knew it. So he actually texted me and was like, "Hey, you might want to quit that. You might want to come up to my room." So I had a little bit of a feeling, and I got up there, and him and the other 2 coaches had a couple beers, cheered for me. And, Snit, I grew up in an area not far from Brian Snitker. So I've known Brian since I was probably like 9 or 10, just in the area. So it was really special to have him tell me I was going to the big leagues. And then JJ Piccolo, who's now the GM of the Royals with Dayton up there in Kansas City, drove. Yes, he is. We always talk about the Eagles, man. The Eagles and Falcons. We always had money on it every year. But so we drove. He drove me all the way to Atlanta. I get in at 1 a.m, and I love it because I'm probably one of the few that actually spent the night in their childhood homes before their first game in the big league. I get there at 10:30 the next morning. We have a day-night doubleheader against the Cubs, and Jerome Williams was pitching game 2. Former Philly, was a teammate of mine, and then Mark Pryor was pitching game 1. And I remember Bobby saying, "I'm going to play you in one of the 2. Which one do you want to play?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll probably play the nightcap." And, honestly, it was the best thing because I sat in the dugout the whole first game. I almost pinch hit actually in the 8th inning, but I sat in the dugout and was able to kind of watch everything. And I really think that was huge because it took the anxiety was building because I knew I was going to play that night. But at the same time, I kind of got to see the speed of the game, see how things worked in the dugout. And so by the time I got to the game, man, it was great. 45,000 that night. Word had spread, obviously, that I was playing that night game. And so it was a moment I'll never forget, and I was 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts going into my last AB. And I had a 3-2 count. And I had, Glendon Rush, who I tell you, my favorite player in the big leagues because he hung me a changeup and I hit one dead center. And I still to this day, I honestly will tell you, I do not remember running around the bases. I think I just was floating. Yeah. And, and crossed home plate and looked up and saw my whole family. And, you've met my dad before up there in Philadelphia. He's got the mustache. He's a no nonsense type guy. And honestly, it was the first time in my career I ever looked up and saw my dad going nuts and cheering. And I had never seen him do that.
I got to be honest, it gives me chills when you tell that story. I mean, I love hearing those stories, and all of you guys have a story of your major league debut, and it's just so great. The family's there. I'm sure lots of friends were there as well. And I guess once you do that, the anxiety level comes down, and now you can just go out and do what you've been doing your whole life, and that's play baseball, right?
And that's the great thing, man. Bobby was awesome to come up for. He doesn't give you this feel good speech when you come in. I came into his office. He said, "I'm pumped to have you here." you got 15, 20 days, show me what you got. And, it was great because he cheered for you, he was behind you. And it was awesome, man. I got to do something that a lot of people don't get to do. I got to play alongside Andrew Jones in the freaking prime of his career in center field. And, I still to this day think, him and Willie Mays for me are 1-2 in outfielders. I mean, Andrew was incredible. And so that made it great too.
Yeah, you played with a lot of great teammates. We're going to get to that in a minute. But that year, 2005, you did make an impact. You batted 300. You had 14 home runs, 45 RBIs, and you played 70 games. So you finished third in the Rookie of the Year voting in 2005. And then you come back in 2006. And had you not qualified in 2005, you probably win the Rookie of the Year in 2006 because your 2006 year numbers were just off the charts. 2005, a guy named Ryan Howard ended up winning.
Yeah, he ended up hitting, I think. Yeah, that big old monster ended up hitting about 14 home runs in September. And I always gave it, whenever I got to first base, I always told him, like, you stole that Rookie of the Year from me, man.
Yeah, he had a good run there for a little while, Ryan Howard, one of our favorites.
But
in 2006, you come back and you play all 162 and really had probably your best season of your career. But it was at that time, you're playing in your hometown. The Sports Illustrated article had come out prior, the year before. People don't know what I'm talking about. You're on the cover of Sports Illustrated, the Natural. And we talked a little bit about the pressure of playing in your hometown. There was a lot coming at you at that point. And you're what, 22, 23 years old? At that
22.
Yeah. Yeah. So how difficult was handling all that? Because of course you love it, but it does add to everything.
No, it does. You always felt the pressure to perform every day. I think that's a good thing because you want to have expectations. You don't want, anybody to have anything. And, we were lucky, myself, Brian McCann, Kelly, there was a bunch, Kelly Johnson. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of young guys that we came up together. So it was good. We were able to kind of stick together at times, but Tim Hudson, Chipper Jones, Smoltzy, Glav, those guys were so good at inviting us everywhere, whether it's dinner or golf, or any of that stuff, so they made us feel real comfortable, when we came in. Now, they ragged us and they had good things. I still think one of the great stories for me was the day my Sports Illustrated came out. So I did a shoot for Sports Illustrated. I didn't know it was going to be on the cover. They told me there was a chance.
Right.
And so we're in Chicago playing Wrigley Field, my first ever game there that night. And I'm playing cards with a couple of the guys at like 3:00. And our PR guy comes in and just throws about 60 stacks on the table and it spreads. Well, you can imagine Chipper and those guys who'd never even been on Sports Illustrated cover. They're like, "Oh my God, you got to be kidding me!"
Exactly.
So I of course, felt very confident going into the game that night. And then between you and me, you know what happened? I got the hat trick by Carlos Zambrano, and he blew every fastball by me. And I remember coming back in, and we ended up winning the game 2-1. And I sat at my locker, and Chipper Jones goes, "Natural my ass." so that teammates had a good way to keep you grounded.
Always. And you know what? That's what it's all about too, because that's an important part of it as well. Let's talk about some of the teammates that you played with, because you played with guys, obviously Hall of Fame talent, guys that should be in the Hall of Fame, and here in Philly, obviously you played with Brian and you played with Chase, and you mentioned Chipper. I think you crossed over with Dale Murphy at the very beginning. Did you? Or no, I guess not.
No, I'm not that old.
No, not that old. No,
I know this.
But I know you know Dale. Yeah. I should have known that. But so many guys that you did play with, and I would imagine you take pieces from all those guys, and as then you become an older player, you're giving pieces back to some of the young guys, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I played with so many great teammates and against them, so many times. And probably one of the most surreal moments I'll never forget, one of the coolest moments of my career was I came in the weight room one day at like 1. I got when you're young, you get there really early. Yeah. And I walk in the weight room and I look over and I see this guy on the treadmill, and it was Hank Aaron. Yeah. And we were the only two in the weight room there. And he ended up getting off the treadmill, and we talked for about 30 minutes about hitting and all this. And, when he passed last year, I went to his funeral, And it was unbelievable to see the people that were at this thing that had meant, and just to think that I had those 30 minutes. That's all I kept thinking about, that here I was with Hammer and Hank. So, that was the cool thing. I was part of a rich organization that, had a lot of great players. You did talk about Murph, Dale Murph. Murph came back all the time, man.
Yeah,
he was at all these games. And so, it was always fun. And of course, playing against, Philly in the prime when they were going through it, it was awesome. I loved playing against Chase and Jimmy, and, Chase got hit 10 times a year by Tim Hudson, just going in every time, but those were some of the best days because of just the competitive nature of the game. And I'm not going to say it's not competitive anymore, but, we always said hi to those guys. But when we got on the field, man, there was no slapping rears. There was no, it was like, I'm here to beat your brains out. And that was always fun.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I kind of miss that mentality a little bit.
So do I.
I know a lot of people do. All right. So then let's fast forward, because you come to an end in Atlanta. Were you surprised when you got traded by the Braves to the Mets?
Well, I wasn't away. At the same time, I'm not going to get into how this all happened, but the GM, Frank Wren, I like to say, would have traded me for a bag of balls at that point. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff.
Gotcha.
But it ended up being a great thing for me, man. I got to go to New York. I'll never forget when Bobby told me I was traded to the Mets. And I remember thinking, the Mets, like, I'm supposed to hate this team, And literally 17 hours later, I'm playing right field in Citi Field, and I'm like, this is weird. But if anything, it taught me a good lesson, because I realized, like, right away, this is a business, man. And, as much as I loved playing in Atlanta and stuff, I think it was a good, healthy time for me to get away and kind of, make a niche somewhere else, at another place. And so, that as tough as it was, I think it also ended up being a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, when I was looking back at the full career, I didn't realize that you had played with 8 different franchises. I mean, I knew you had played. I would have said 5 or 6 if someone would have asked, but the 8 different franchises. And again, as that experience is had, playing in the big leagues, we all know is a difficult thing. Staying in the big leagues is a difficult thing. And, no matter what the pedigree is and what season you had at this point or this point, you have to perform all the time. And for you, there was a time where, staying in the big leagues, was an effort, and you fought and you went back to the minors a little bit. And tell me a little bit about how that shapes the kind of ball player that you are.
Well, for 8.5 years, I just played every day and never really, even when I got traded and struggled and then went to Kansas City for 2.5 years, I played every day. I started, and, I had to go back to El Paso with San Diego in 14. And, a guy that I give a lot of credit to my career is Pat Murphy, who's the bench coach in Milwaukee, man. And, he was a longtime coach at Notre Dame, Arizona State. And, he honestly, between him and my wife, those two really kept me going in El Paso, because there's many days, Murph, where I kind of woke up and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? I'm like, but those guys kept pushing me. And, Murph said, dude, you got so much left in the tank. And, I kind of was, as he kept saying that, I kept getting better. I kept, honestly, I had fun again, man. I had like 7 pitching appearances down there. Murph actually threw me in a 3-1 game in the 8th inning.
Yeah.
And I came in and got 2 outs, and it was great because he actually got a phone call from the farm director after, said, you cannot put a position player in a 3-1 game with a full bullpen use. And then, of course, it's Pat. Well, I love Pat. Pat said, well, Frenchie was our best chance to stay in the game,
He knew that host. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but, it taught me to have fun again. And like I said, another moment in my career when I finally got back to the big leagues, I'm like, you know what, man, I ain't going back.
Yeah. Yeah. It just changes and sets perspective for sure. All right. Well, you mentioned 2 things I want to get to before I have to let you go, because I know we're running out of time, but you mentioned 2014 El Paso, and one of the great baseball traditions are baseball pranks. They pull pranks on guys all the time. But here you are, a guy that had spent years in the big leagues, and you come back to El Paso. You're an unlikely target for a prank, but yet one of the epic ones pulled on you by Pat Murphy and a cast of thousands. Tell us that story in a nutshell real quick.
Well, I show up the last day of spring training with them, because I was in Cleveland for camp. And so I literally show up. We're taking BP. I smoke a ball to left field BP, and all the pitchers scatter. They're having a meeting, and except one guy. And I turned to, I'm like, what the hell's wrong with that guy? And I mean, without blinking, Murph goes, "Oh, you didn't know he's deaf?" And I was like, "Get out of here." And he goes, "No, seriously, he's deaf. One of the first AAA deaf players, blah." I was like, "Dang, man." I was like, "No crap." So the next morning we had a team meeting at 11 o'clock before we flew out. Well, I didn't know it, but they had a meeting at 9:30, and the whole team basically got in on this thing. So for 17 days, I believe one of my teammates was deaf, and you should have seen it, man. We were in Tacoma, and he threw like a perfect inning, and I came in, man, and you know me, I patted him on the chest real hard. I was like, "Great job," screaming in his face. Dude, he never broke stride. We would be on the plane, headed to wherever we were. He would never put earphones on. He'd just sit there with a dead stare and look ahead. Yeah. And finally we're in Tacoma, and it was like a day after my dad actually came up, and Pat came and said, "You got to come in the locker room to see what a dumb, what your son is." And they show me this video of him talking and him. And I mean, I've always been a prankster, that. So like they got me to the ultimate thing. Yeah. And people always ask me like, "Did you get mad? Did you get him back?" I said, "No, I actually bought a steak dinner the next night we're everywhere for the whole team." Cause I was like, I had never been got like that before. And, it was pretty amazing. So I always tell people, I'll tell the story one time, they can ask me about it once. The second time they get a punch.
Yeah, I was treading lightly.
No, you're good.
It's a great story, and it's getting the prankster getting pranked is always a lot of fun, because you are such a fun-loving guy and a guy that teammates love. So it all happens for a reason. They're not going they're not going to do that to a guy that they don't think that can handle it and have some fun with it. Certainly you could. All right. Before I let you go, I got to ask you about your time in Philadelphia.
Yep.
Like I said at the beginning of the program, only 1 year here, but I feel like you connected not only with this city, with our fan base, with the organization as well. It wasn't a very good team, and there was a lot that went on during that season.
Yep.
But still, what do you remember about your time here in Philly?
Well, as I got to thinking where I wanted to go in 15, Charlie Manuel reached out to me, and Chucky will always have a special place in my heart. I tell the story all the time. You used to come on deck as a Brave, and I'd look over there in the dugout at Citizens Bank, and Charlie'd sit there and he'd look at you like, "Hit a homer," and he's like saying this to me on the other
team.
Likes
to watch.
He loved homers. And you know what? That actually worked out great, because Ryan Howard was coming off still a bad year with his Achilles. And me and Ryan have got a pretty good friendship over the years. And you know what? For 6 weeks, man, me and him went to work with Charlie in spring training. We were on the backfields. You remember it, man. We were putting in the work. And so when I got a chance there, I remember thinking Philadelphia. I'd been there all the years as a visiting player. Loved the passion of the fans. But I had no idea how much I would love playing in Philadelphia. And, my wife and I had our little daughter. She was pregnant with our son. We would go to Little Three Bears Park almost every day, push our kid, go to the Reading Market. And I had a great year there, man. I mean, I thrived in that atmosphere. I'm in a way of like Chase Utley. I remember Chase telling me like, and I always played hard. He said, "Dude, just play hard and these fans will love you." And, that's what I did. And, as well as I've told you the story, I know a lot of people know, I was so disappointed when I couldn't come back. And we were actually working on a deal with Ruben Amaro and Scott Profrock, who I absolutely love. And then, everything kind of happened. Clentech got hired, and, look, I get it. Guys bring their own guys in and want it. But that's honestly one of the only regrets I have in baseball, is that I could not go back to Philly in 16, man. I wanted to so bad. And people are always like, "Yeah, but you got to come back to your hometown team with the Braves." And I'll be honest, it was tough, because my heart was in Philly, man. And I really was upset, because I loved playing there, man. I loved the challenge. Even though we weren't good, the fans there expected us to be good and expected the best every time. And it brought the best out of me. But, it just wasn't meant to be. But it's always great, because, just like a couple of weeks ago when I came back, when I see everybody there, it's been 7 years and it feels like it was yesterday. Everybody, they love me. They hug me. How's it going? How's the family? And so I tell people this too. There's no better place that they treat families than Philadelphia Phillies. The family room, the way they, just the wives. I mean, it was an incredible place to play.
Yeah. Well, make no mistake, you get what you give. And that's the kind of person you were, and I'm sure right through your career, but certainly with your time in Philadelphia. All right. Final question, and you just mentioned is that you're very good at the transition. You should get into TV and radio at some point in your career. But you mentioned the wives and I was surprised to learn because I did extensive research for this podcast. So I read your Wikipedia page and in that, I did not realize that you met your wife in grammar school, third grade at a birthday party. I did not know that. Were you guys friends throughout, or did you reconnect in high school? Or
we were friends. We went to like 7th grade Valentine's Day dance. We went to 9th grade homecoming, but she never would date me because she said I was too cocky, which she probably was so true. And finally, our senior year of high school, we started dating. And I remember I went over there. I'm like, look, I might be cocky, but I know you like me and I like you. So let's do this. And, but it was always great because, as I told you, there's not a lot of wives that would, after 8.5 years, leave the big league lifestyle and go live in a 2-bedroom apartment in El Paso, Texas with a little bit. She did. And, she always kind of picked up and went wherever we had to make home. And so, it was really cool to have someone that you've known forever, all our families and everything. Now, her dad will tell you the thing that sucked about it. We had 550 people at our wedding. And I remember after our wedding, because we had, all our childhood friends. She went to UGA, and then of course, all my baseball friends. And I remember her dad coming up to me and said, someday you'll realize, but it was like for our wedding, he goes, it's like I bought 2 Mercedes and 4 hours later drove them off a cliff. He goes, so I hope you enjoyed this night. And now I did tell him, I said, I took your daughter off the payroll at 22. So I'm probably actually getting the raw end here.
Yeah. Call me when I'm 52 and then we'll settle up. We'll be okay.
No doubt.
It's a great story. And she's great. Katie is terrific. And you're a lucky guy for sure.
I am.
In so many ways. Jeff, this has been a lot of fun. I know you got some responsibilities for your other job now that you are in television, and so we're going to have to let you go. But really appreciate your time. Appreciate the stories and the insight and the friendship over the years. You're one of the real good ones for sure. And it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Murph. Man, y'all are the best. And anytime you need anything, I'm right here.
I do know that. Thank you. Jeff Francoeur joining us here on Glove Stories. We'll take a quick break, but when we come back, Charlie Manuel, Larry Bowa will join us. So stay with us. The all-new BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app is here for both Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Get in on all the action, whether it's baseball, the basketball and hockey playoffs, golf, all your favorite sports. Download the all-new BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app and make your first bet risk-free up to $750. Bet more than the score. Bet on individual player performances for hits, home runs, and strikeouts. Bet innings, first team to score, and more. BetParx is the only sportsbook and casino app that I recommend. The BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app, where odds, bets, slots, and games all come together in perfect harmony right in your pocket. Sportsbook and all your favorite casino games for real money, all in one amazing app. Live in-game betting lets you bet while you watch the game. Download right now in the App Store, Google Play Store, or at betparx.com and use my promo code Murph. BetParx is also an official proud betting operator of the PGA Tour. The all-new BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app. You must be 21 and in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Welcome to This Week in Philly Baseball History, presented by Shibe Vintage Sports. This week in 2005, Bobby Abreu broke home run derby records with 24 homers in the first round and 41 overall at the All-Star Game in Detroit. A year later, Ryan Howard outslugged rivals David Wright and Miguel Cabrera to win the Derby in Pittsburgh. Celebrate more Philly sports history with clothing from Shibe Vintage Sports, where there's a story in every stitch. Visit them at 13th and Walnut Streets or at shibesports.com.
Phillies Nation is your source for breaking news, original analysis, trade insights, and more. Read today's articles at philliesnation.com. And welcome back to Glove Stories with Murph, and it's the time on the podcast where we welcome in Larry Bowa and Charlie Manuel to get their thoughts on, some big topics in baseball. And I thought we could have some fun with this one, guys, today, because when we sit around in the broadcast booth or when you guys are sitting around just chatting, everybody wants to fix the game of baseball, right? You know, it's not a perfect game, and there's some things that have happened over the course of the last couple of years that maybe have kind of tweaked it from when you guys played and managed. So I'm giving you the opportunity to be the commissioner of baseball for the day, and give me your thoughts on how you would change the game. And Larry, I'll start with you. Is there a particular rule or just a mindset that you would pick first?
Well, there's a bunch of them, but the one that stands out in my mind, Murph, and Charlie and I have talked about this, is extra inning games, putting a man on second.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? And Charlie made a great point. He says, the idea of winning a division is being able to endure an 18-inning game, come back the next day. That tells you how strong your roster is, how your farm system is. But you put a guy on second base after the ninth inning, to me, that's a big-time joke. That's making a farce out of the game. If you're a good baseball team, you can overcome an 18-inning game and then come back the next day, even if it's a day game. It shows you how good your ball club is. It shows you how strong your farm system is if you have to pull up some kids from the minor leagues. But the way it's situated right now, you very seldom. The other day, they happened to have a 13-inning game with the Yankees and Cubs. But most of the time, those games are over by the 10th or the 11th inning. But that's the one rule that I think is should not be in there. Let these guys play, figure it out, and you're going to find out how good your ball club is over the course of 162 games.
I could not agree with you more. I'm totally on board with that. I can't stand it. I think we've only played one 11-inning game since the new rule was in place. So only one time did the Phillies go into the 11th inning. It always ended in the 10th in their extra inning games. Some of the best memories I have growing up watching baseball and listening to baseball on the radio is, into the wee hours of the night as the game stretches 13, 14 innings, right?
You know what, Murph? We had a game against San Diego that ended up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning because we had a doubleheader. Mitch Williams ended up winning the game. He got a base hit. We had a day game the next day. We had a day game. Half the guys just stayed there and slept. But that's the part of knowing how good your ball club is. Yeah. This stuff about you've got to worry about your pitching. We don't have enough pitching. Well, you know what? That's on your organization not having enough depth in your organization where you can't go down there and pick up a pitcher or two. But to me, that it's amazing that you can do that during the whole season. Now, once the playoff starts, we're not going to do that anymore.
Exactly.
So that tells you right there, it's not that good a rule.
I agree with you. I wonder if that will change. It may go away after this year. We will see. I hope it does. All right, Charlie, your turn. You are now commissioner of baseball. What are you doing to help the game?
Time a game.
Okay.
The time of game, like we talk about it, and I think about it sometimes, and we've made probably in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we make all these changes about striving for shorten the game and things like that. We haven't, and so far we haven't worked anything out. What we've done actually is it seems to me like the games are even longer. And when we do pass a rule or something, where we think it's going to shorten the game, all of a sudden we'll pick up something else. We'll make the commercials longer, or we do something in the game, like to take that time up.
Yeah.
And I would definitely want to see, like how we can cut the game. They got right now they're experimenting the minor leagues on the 14th pitch, second pitch clock, things like that. I don't know if I like it or not yet, but I did see in Lehigh Valley, I did see about a almost 20-minute change in a game that they said about. But at the same time, I would change the game, like the time of the game. But also, Murph, there's another one I would definitely change, and I think I would change the 3-batter rule. Yeah. And the reason is I think it brings it brings more decision making for the manager, and also, like he can match up his bullpen better. And at the same, when I look around and I see, and we look at a roster, and we got anywhere from 13 to 16 pitchers. I think that's way too many. And also when you got them down there, like you're going to try to find a place to use some of. Yeah. So, like I think in the long run that takes up time.
Right. And they thought that was going to be one of those rules that helped speed things up. It has not at all.
No.
And to your point, maybe even added time to the game. All right. So 2 good ones from Charlie that you would change. Larry, you got another one for us?
Yeah, I'm sort of against the play at second base, breaking up a double play. I mean, you got a man on first and third, and it's a 2-2 game in the 8th inning. Your job as the guy on first is to upset the guy at second. Now, I'm not saying go out of your way, but if you slide over the bag now, it's an automatic double play. And, back in the day, and I know it's not the same, guys used to come in and elbow you and try to knock you into left center field, but you accepted that. That was all part of the gig. But now it's like, you can't touch a second baseman. If you slide over the bag, that one hand has to be a body length by the bag. That's out the window now. So you got to go straight into the bag and not go over the top of it. I think it takes away the competitiveness of the game. And like I said, you get in the 8th inning, 9th inning, top of the 9th, first and third, one out, and they're playing for 2. You got a chance to win the game by not even getting a hit, by breaking up a double play. Yeah. I think that rule's got to go out.
I agree with you, and I would throw at home plate right on top of that and put it all together. Yep. Look, again, not blatant, linebacker versus running back kind of collisions, but certainly the whole idea of being able to block the plate, it should be allowed in baseball. I mean, it's a big part of the defensive side of being a catcher, right?
You know what, Murph? If a catcher wants to block home plate, let him.
Yeah.
If they don't have to.
Exactly.
I mean, Mike Scioscia was probably the best. He would plant at home plate. You'd have to go through him or you're not getting to the plate. But he knew he was going to get hit. So if a catcher is strong enough and big enough and believes in what he's doing, can block the plate, let him do it. Yeah. I mean, he's putting himself at risk, but if he wants to do it, I just see too many sweep tags now that if they block the plate, these runners are out. And the reason they're doing the sweep tags because they can't block home plate. So that's another rule. I agree with that 100%.
Yep. Totally. Hey, one of my favorite stories that Sarge tells all the time involves the play at second base where he was on first and ground ball to the infield, and Ozzie Smith was at short, and he is barreling towards Ozzie Smith, and he says, I'm thinking to myself, I am going to go right through him and knock him into left field. And he said, and I get right there, and Ozzie's right there in front of me, and I slide, and next thing you know, I'm bouncing over the bag, and I'm rolling into left field, and Ozzie's nowhere to be seen. And then Ozzie looks at him, and he goes, that's 2. So it's part of the game. It's the personality of the game. So, that's a lot of fun. All right, very, very good rules. I think a couple of those might actually get changed. So maybe we've done some good today here on.
Well, we'll see. We'll
see. We'll keep our fingers crossed. All right, Larry, Charlie, we'll see you next week, guys. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Welcome to This Week in Philly Baseball History, presented by Shibe Vintage Sports. This week in 2005, Bobby Abreu broke home run derby records with 24 homers in the first round and 41 overall at the All-Star Game in Detroit. A year later, Ryan Howard outslugged rivals David Wright and Miguel Cabrera to win the Derby in Pittsburgh. Celebrate more Philly sports history with clothing from Shibe Vintage Sports, where there's a story in every stitch. Visit them at 13th and Walnut Streets or at shibesports.com.
The all-new BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app is here for both Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Get in on all the action, whether it's baseball, the basketball and hockey playoffs, golf, all your favorite sports. Download the all-new BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app and make your first bet risk-free up to $750. Bet more than the score. Bet on individual player performances for hits, home runs, and strikeouts. Bet innings, first team to score, and more. BetParx is the only sportsbook and casino app that I recommend. The BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app, where odds, bets, slots, and games all come together in perfect harmony right in your pocket. Sportsbook and all your favorite casino games for real money, all in one amazing app. Live in-game betting lets you bet while you watch the game. Download right now in the App Store, Google Play Store, or at betparx.com and use my promo code Murph. BetParx is also an official proud betting operator of the PGA Tour. The all-new BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app. You must be 21 and in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Phillies Nation is your source for breaking news, original analysis, trade insights, and more. Read today's articles at philliesnation.com. Glove Stories with Murph is sponsored by the Bet Parks Casino and Sportsbook app, along with Shine Vintage Sports and Phillies Nation, and is a presentation of SBC Media Partners. The engineer for Glove Stories is Chad Evans. Cindy Webster is our marketing and guest relations director, and our executive producer is Roger Haddon. Whether you are watching us on YouTube or downloading the podcast from one of the major podcast providers like Apple, Google, or Spotify, make sure to hit like and subscribe so that we can let you know when a new episode of Glove Stories is available. We'll release new episodes weekly throughout the 2022 Major League Baseball season.